I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
Peter, thanks for doing this.
Anytime at all.
Now, I wanted to start with your current role. It's a fairly new role with the Master Plumbers. What do you do on a day-to-day basis for those of us who don't know you and what it entails?
So I guess on a day-to-day basis, it's a CEO role. So I spend time mentoring staff. I spend time setting business strategy and direction, and doing a lot of coaching at the moment. It's a fascinating organisation, Master Plumbers.
Okay.
Different to organisations I've worked in the past, and trying to bring a slightly different focus to what we do.
Yeah, let's just pause it for a second.
It'd be hard to clean that up otherwise. Sorry. It'd be hard to clean that up.
It was like as soon as we started recording that...
It's always the way.
That
Garbage
started.
truck drives past or something.
Now, this is quite a step down in organisational size from where you've come from the RACV. Tell us about your time there, your roles there, and your journey through that huge organisation. You just told me 2.1 million members.
Yeah, look, RACV is a fascinating organisation. It's iconic. It's a brand that's very well known, and something that I think on average 2/3 of households across the state have an RACV member in them. So it's very, very well known, and lots of people interact with RACV.
Yep.
So I was really lucky. I was there for a period of about 17 years, working in different roles. I came into RACV as an engineer. By training, I am a civil engineer and did a lot of work in transport and road safety. So the early days at RACV, the early part of my career there was all about engineering and road safety and traffic, and managed a number of different areas in that regard.
Because you came from Vic Roads before that?
I worked at Vic Roads. I did some secondments at Vic Roads. In fact, my very first job was working for the Road Construction Authority,
right,
doing road drainage and pavement design down in the peninsula and what's now Eastlink.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Designing some of the precursors to Eastlink, working in a design studio there. Back in those days, no computers, it was all done by hand, and it actually wasn't that long ago.
I remember my dad working on the big swivel boards and the rulers that come out of the side and keep your square angles and all that sort of stuff. So
That's right.
Yep.
So no, I did a lot of that work, and at RACV, advocating on behalf of members, making sure that the system's safe, that government's doing the right thing and listening to the community.
Yep.
Middle part of my career was really around policy and advocacy and moving more into the business side of RACV.
Yep.
So I spent, as everybody does at RACV, membership is always on your mind, because it is a member organisation. It's a big organisation, but at its heart it is a member organisation.
Yep.
And moving into areas such as public policy, public affairs. I even looked after the contact centre for a short period of time while I was there. So great organisation, great exposure across everything from hospitality through to training, through to engineering, policy, public affairs, corporate services, ICT, HR, the like. Great training ground, RACV, and I worked for some absolutely fantastic people there.
So, what was that organisation originally put together? Do you know the history of it?
So RACV actually started as an organisation that was there to represent members' interests.
Okay. So essentially, it's a group of people get together.
Yeah.
They all put into, this is very broken down, put into a kitty, and they use that kitty to lobby for increases in levels of safety and roads and that sort of thing associated with the automotive industry. Have I got that in a very...
No, very, very much so. And back in the day, this is when cars weren't commonplace.
Yep.
So it was advocating for the right of the motorist, and obviously it's moved more now into the home space and mobility and travel and leisure.
Yep.
But it started as an advocate for its members, who in those days were motorists, and has continued that proud tradition. And lots of links that are very similar to Master Plumbers.
Of course, yeah. So your role at Master Plumbers, I want to get into some of the ins and outs of the organisation. I want to break those down a little bit. But let's go to the first step. How did you find out about the job? Talk us through that process, because I've heard whispers it was a bit of a lengthy process. I don't know that for sure, but reading between the lines, it was.
I think I'd say it was any board has to make sure that they've got the right people, and it's a good fit for both the candidate and the organisation. So
absolutely,
I think it was a very good process, a robust process to go through. But how I found out about it, it came up through a conversation I had with someone, and there was a role that was advertised, and I went through the usual process in applying for it.
And you came through obviously with flying colours. So, when did you start? March.
Started in February, but we had a transition process with Ken as Ken was retiring. We were in a really fortunate position to do probably one of the best practice handovers that I've had in my career, which was fantastic. I got to learn the ropes, to meet the people, to understand the business while Ken was still running it. So that, and I'm very grateful to Ken and the board for doing that. But yes, I took the reins just after the AGM in March.
Okay. And what was it? I know normally people in senior management and the levels that you've sort of operated at, normally they look at an organisation, they can see that they can have their own influence on the organisation. They can see where it needs to be pushed, where it needs to go, and they've got their own ideas about some of the things that they could do to lift that. So what did you see initially?
I saw an organisation which was incredibly passionate about its industry, passionate, knowledgeable, very deep in terms of its knowledge and its understanding of what was going on. And that's in Victoria, but it's also nationally. And I guess that's what really attracted me to the industry. It's not an industry that I've worked directly in before. I've done a bit of design and drainage in the past in relation to roads, but not plumbing. I'm not a plumber. But it is an industry where it has a really strong technical component. It's an industry where change is happening. And it's one of these very few industries, I think, that is absolutely critical to public health and in fact underpins public health. And again, that's the link with engineering. Some of the greatest advances in public health have been through engineering and plumbing, and to put it crudely, separating waste from drinking water.
Yeah, well, it's a big part of our evolution as humans, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So so that's sort of what the organisation is. So where did you see where's your idea for taking it moving forward?
Well, I think very similar to many member associations, they always need to make sure that they understand why they exist, and you exist for members.
Yes.
You exist to be hopefully a very valued part of a member's life or business, and we have to make sure that we're always adding value, being relevant, and making membership meaningful to those who are Master Plumbers members.
So, plumbers that are involved, what does anyone get involved in a membership organisation? So if you just think about the maths, and I probably have this wrong, but if you got 10 people all putting $10, surely the kitty's $100, right? So how does that organisation then take that $100 and send back $200, $20 each to each of its members? Is there maths behind that? How does it work?
Well, I think the first thing to understand, I guess, is that people join membership associations for different reasons.
Of course.
There used to be a time, going back many decades now, where joining a membership association was considered in some ways to be a rite of passage. That you learnt your trade, you learnt your profession, and you were accepted into the industry association as a sort of a mark of quality. And I guess in many member associations, that's still there with the grade of fellow, particularly in the associations that are related more to professions. I think in terms of Master Plumbers, the focus going forward for us is around membership. It's around growing our membership. It's creating more value for our existing and our future members, and making sure that we remain relevant to members as their business changes. So we're trying to do more things that connect members with their business, connect members with other members, and really improve the industry that all these people are so incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, that I'm not sure I was ever maybe against it is the wrong word, but I didn't appreciate how much good can come from plumbers getting together. Because you can get a bit competitive, we all can from time to time, and we quote against each other in certain circumstances and all that sort of thing. But I think once you realise that there's a lot of work out there, and there's enough work for all of us. So if we can bind together a bit with some of the things that we're doing, well, I mean, we all benefit, right?
Oh, look, I agree, and I think that's my style of working. You can achieve so much more when you're working together with people than you can sort of working as disparate parts. So, look, I agree. I think the industry faces a number of challenges. When you're trying to either work in your business or work on your business, as well as work in or on your industry, that's an incredible commitment to make. I think the beauty and sometimes, I suppose, understated benefit of being a member of any membership association, particularly industry ones, is that those associations are working on your behalf to try to improve your industry. And again, that's a very proud part of Master Plumbers' history and background, that it has worked really well to improve the plumbing industry and probably more broadly the construction industry.
Well, I think if I can be confident saying that I think plumbing in a lot of ways really leads a lot of these things, which is probably speaks directly back to the work of the Master Plumbers organisations and that sort of thing. So no matter where you are in the industry, you want to be in an environment where it's getting better all the time, right? You're lifting each other up because, you know, the rising tide lifts all.
Well, that's absolutely right. An improved industry is good for industry participants. You know, particularly in professions like plumbing and electrical. Public health is number one. Safety is number one. The ability to cause hurt or harm if we get things wrong as an industry is very, very significant. I mean, when you're working with gas, when you're working with drinking water, when you're working with waste, when you're working at heights, and when you're working in all sorts of dangerous and confined spaces on behalf of the public. It's an industry that is regulated for very, very good reasons. Because if we have shonky operators in the industry doing the wrong thing, the capacity to cause hurt and harm is very, very real.
Oh, let's be real about it. People die, right? If you get it wrong,
absolutely,
if you do the wrong thing,
yeah,
it can happen.
Absolutely. And you know, there's no shortage of examples over the years where things have gone wrong. Either because people were doing things beyond their training, or because they weren't trained in the first place. And you know, that's again a really important part of an industry association like Master Plumbers. It's trying to lift the standards of the industry, which really benefits all players.
Yeah, and also I think we all have if we're a business owner like I am, we sort of tend to be on that growth, or come from that growth mindset, if you like, which can lead to, at times, you step outside of your capabilities, which means that you can fall back on your peers through the Master Plumbers and that sort of thing to help you through those things, which again lifts the overall safety level of the organisation. So no, it's certainly a beneficial thing. Now, you lobby for changes from time to time. What's on the agenda at the moment? Is there anything you can talk about? Things that you'd like to see happen from a legislative point of view?
Oh, look, I think there's a few things happening at the moment. In Victoria, at least, the plumbing regs are sunsetting or have sunsetted, so they're out for comment at the moment. And making sure that the regulatory framework for our industry to work in is appropriate, safe, and as future-proof as we can make it. Is really, really important for Master Plumbers. I guess, you know, these regs are going to be around for a long time. Plumbing is changing and has changed. Everything from the techniques we use to join pipes through to how we run our businesses. It's all changing, and the regulatory framework needs to not just facilitate but enable plumbing businesses to be the best they can to serve their customers and clients and lift the standards of the entire industry. And I guess that's what we're focused on in terms of the regulatory framework.
There's quite a lot of noise recently around off-site work. Where do you, I know you're not a plumber specifically, but you probably know about it. And what I'm talking about is roofs being constructed in factories, modules being brought in to form the bathroom at a hospital and those sort of things. So sort of this building block method of construction.
Pod constructions.
Pod construction, yeah. Where do you stand on that? Because there is some confusion, I know, at the moment whether off-site plumbing is really plumbing or it's really building, and it's a bit grey, isn't it?
Look, I think it is, and the watermark scheme, as I understand it, was never really set up to cater for that sort of off-site pod manufacturer.
Yeah.
It causes all sorts of issues. I mean, if we get to the stage where we are importing whole bathrooms from overseas, never been seen by an Australian plumber, we don't know whether it's plumbed to Australian standards, whether it's compliant, whether it's safe, whether it's a risk. And you know, once it's here and installed, and we're asking Australian plumbers to connect it up and take responsibility for it. It's really hard to take responsibility for something that you haven't seen, or you don't know what's sitting behind the facades and the walls. So our position on that is really clear. We don't believe that Watermark was set up for that purpose, and we don't believe Watermark certification should be applied to pods.
Okay, so do we need another set of rules and regulations around that?
Well, there's a review going on at the moment by the federal government and the agencies, so we'll await to see what the results from that are, but we're making our views very clear through our national association as well.
Because I can't see any reason why that wouldn't actually, or the amount of things that are being imported partially or fully constructed, I can't see a reason why they wouldn't increase. Can you? I mean,
no.
As labour in Australia gets more expensive, we tend to look for cheaper labour, right, to put it bluntly.
Look, we can, but I guess the trade-off with that is that the cheaper labour often means corners cut.
Yeah, of course.
Either in material or in workmanship. And, you know, do we really want to be contributing to people being underpaid in other countries? You know, it's not an argument, I don't think, about protectionism. It's an argument about making sure that what comes into the country is safe for Australian consumers. And you know, a big part of that is compliant with the regulatory frameworks and the checks and balances that we've got in things like Watermark. But even with Watermark at the moment, there's gaps.
Yeah.
Some of the bubbler taps that you see in schools and hospitals and parks, you know, they're not necessarily covered by the Watermark scheme. So, you know, there's gaps that need to be plugged in these sorts of compliance frameworks, and we're working really hard with our sister associations in the other states and territories to make sure those gaps are plugged.
It's like everything in building, right? It's all good, it's all good, it's all good, and then something goes wrong.
Oh yeah, she'll be right.
Yeah,
she'll be right until it goes wrong.
That's right.
And then she's not right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we've spoken previously about a little bit about education. I know you've got some views on how we're grooming our kids from the education system moving forward into their chosen career. And I suppose, not to answer the question for you, but our tendency to push our kids to walk down that university path. What are your thoughts on the situation in relation to getting it right for the kids?
Well, I think that's the key, getting it right for the kids.
Yeah.
Before I moved to RACV, I spent a fair bit of time actually teaching civil engineering at Monash University, so I understand the university system.
Yes.
And through some fantastic colleagues that I have now through the Master Plumbers network, I'm really understanding the vocational system to a much greater degree than I ever have in the past before.
Yep.
What it comes down to is about aptitude, I think. Some people, whether they're kids or whether they're more mature aged and looking to change careers, probably have a natural aptitude for a different type of learning. So I think one of the concerns I would have is that, particularly with our younger people, if they are not given options about the different professions that they might head into, how do they know that they're making a good choice? I mean, the old adage is good choices are a function of how many options that you have to consider.
Yeah.
If we're pushing our kids just towards university, then there'll be a group of those who will thrive, and there'll be a group of those who probably won't thrive because it's either not an interest of theirs, or that they'd be much better in what we used to call trades.
So is it something that the Master Plumbers may look at in the future, actually sort of educating, I suppose, where do you get influence, 14, 15, 16? That's where you're probably really starting to make some choices that will affect the rest of your life, for good or for worse, I suppose. Is that something that you want to go in and actually let kids know that this is an option?
Look, I think so, but the real challenge in doing that is you sort of have to join the queue, because just about every profession, from trade professions right through to medicine and engineering and the like, are all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think a large part of it is looking at the people who influence those decisions, whether they be teachers, whether they be parents, increasingly, particularly through social media, peer networks as well, and really just giving people the information about what different careers lead to. So, when I came into this industry, like a very large part of the population, I really didn't appreciate what plumbing was about. When you think of plumbing as a layperson, you think quite naturally of those areas of plumbing that you have most contact with, around sanitary and water supply and drainage and the like, and perhaps roofing. But I hadn't realised that the very high-end, complex building environment systems were installed and in some cases designed by plumbers. So plumbing, I've found, is much more than what the layperson understands, and the real challenge is how you explain that to someone who's 14, 15, or a career teacher or a parent, when we've got the weight of history behind us that people's experience with plumbing is very, very different from that. So it's a challenge for the entire industry. And it's not a challenge that we face alone. It's a challenge that many industries are facing as more and more tech gets built into day-to-day work.
Absolutely. Is a different way of going about it maybe? Can we find better ways through social media, whatever, of celebrating the plumbers, celebrating the job that they do, their lives and what they come of it? Because even having chosen to go down this as a career path, I don't think I gave any thought to the fact that the A380 from Airbus needs plumbing on it.
Absolutely.
I just never thought of it. And I mean, you drive along the street, your houses have plumbing, and maybe I'm not too deep of a thinker, I'm not sure, but some of those really different things, like they need plumbers. It's quite exciting, like some of the jobs. So could we maybe look at celebrating that as not forcing it, but a bit of a carrot, I suppose, if that makes any sense.
I love the word celebrating, because I think that has all the right implications, and building an understanding that plumbing can be a lifelong career. It's not just a job.
No, that's right.
But you can have a career in the plumbing industry, and you can go from working in your young days perhaps with tools right through to running a big plumbing company and facing all the business challenges that go with that. Yeah. So I think that's exactly right. We need to better celebrate not just the achievements of plumbers, but celebrate the careers of plumbers and help people understand that where somebody is now may well be very different to how they started off. Yeah. And that whole journey that they undertook in going from school through to university or college and moving into the profession is something that is going to vary from person to person, but at the end of the day, everybody's different. Everybody can find something different in their job or their career or their pathway to celebrate, and we need to help them do that.
I still feel that in some circumstances, broadly speaking, as a trade industry, it can still be frowned upon a bit, I think, as a choice, and that's the reason why I'm asking these questions, because so much opportunity. It's so broad. It's so it's so exciting in many different ways. And even to be able to get in as a career and then change tracks within it. Yeah. I mean, as you said, you can have a totally different job from one year to the next if you wanted to within the industry. So, I'm not sure if that's a sort of a stigma that you've noticed. Do you think that's still a thing we need to deal with?
I haven't noticed it personally, but in speaking to a whole stack of our members since I've started, then I think there really is that feel out there that, and it flows back to our earlier conversation around career paths and how people are sometimes pushed into a career path that may not be suitable for them. I guess at the core of it, plumbing is a really big industry. It's a diverse industry. It's a challenging industry. It's an exciting industry. You know, as you said, everything from A380s through to domestic plumbing. It's something that is high tech, and being able to convey that to people who may be considering plumbing as a career choice, I think is really, really important. And plumbing, as I've seen it, also if you look at the people who are working in plumbing, there's quite a diversity of backgrounds, of ages, of cultural influences as well, and that's not something that you see in every profession.
No, and we're certainly getting better, more vocal about sharing those particular stories as well. What surprised you most about your new role? It's got to be something that you a month in you thought, gee whiz, I didn't think I'd be doing that. I didn't think I'd see that.
I think it comes back to the complexity of plumbing. As a layperson, I hadn't understood how broad the field of plumbing is, and understanding, going out and talking to members and visiting some of our members' businesses and seeing the work that they do and trying to understand the breadth of what they do. It just really opened my eyes to how big a challenge it is for Master Plumbers to truly represent the industry in depth and making sure that we're across all the challenges that our members face. And but it's a good challenge. It's something that we will rise to.
And is there any common theme to when you're in those businesses on the ground? Is there any common theme to what they're requesting, asking for? Do they have requests, first of all?
Probably the thing that's come through more often than anything else, I think, is the importance of ongoing professional development. So I think most people, in fact more than most, an overwhelming majority of people that I've spoken to all explain to me how the plumbing is just changing, how it has changed over the past decade, how it's continuing to change, both in terms of what we do on the job and how we go about winning jobs and all the business processes and systems behind that. To me, what that means is that ongoing professional development is absolutely key to membership for Master Plumbers, making sure that our members have access to really good professional development and training so that they can keep up with changes in regulation, changes in product development, changes in systems and how systems are used. Is really, really important, because if you want to be successful in any profession, if you want to run a successful business, you've got to know what your competitors are doing, and you've got to know where your industry's heading. And I think that is an absolutely vital role that Master Plumbers can play that will make it relevant to members' lives. Yeah,
there's an avalanche of changes that we're dealing with right now, and I can't say that
it's not going to slow down.
No, exactly not. It's not going to slow down. It's going to get worse. So we talked a lot about. We've just come from a breakfast, which, funnily enough, we both spoke at, and we talked a lot about technology and the changes. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for, let's say, a plumbing business owner?
I think,
in regards to technology,
I think getting started. I mean, a lot of people are going to be familiar with technology, computers, laptops, and the like. Broadly speaking, word processing and email. But it's really how we can use technology to better our business, to help us work more efficiently, more effectively, win new business, retain the loyalty of our customers, and improve what we do. Everything from our own in-house systems through to to understanding what our staff are doing and how we can celebrate staff successes as well. So I think the hard thing is really sorting through everything that's out there and finding something that is relevant and useful to you.
It's tough, yeah.
It is. I mean, you've only got to go to the App Store or any of the app stores and click on productivity and see the massive number of different apps there, and, you know, how do you sort through those to find out which is best for you? I think there's probably a role somewhere for someone to play. Maybe it's us to help people with some recommendations to, you know, what others have found useful, perhaps connecting our members to other members or to peers that have found certain apps or certain technologies useful. And that was one of the things that we closed with in the panel session today, and in trying to get a bit of advice from our expert speakers in how people can actually make a start and take that first step to going on this technology journey beyond laptops, beyond email, you know, beyond the standard software that most would be familiar with. What's the next step to improve my business, to make what I do better, faster, more efficient, and create new business?
Yeah, one of the guys just came up to me afterwards and said, I get it, we have to change now. We can't just sit around. So it's probably particularly important to come at everything with that inquisitive mind, right? Like the App Store, as you said, it's full of different apps, but I mean, unless you go through them, you could very well be shooting yourself in the foot just because you didn't know. And we all know you don't know what you don't know. So I think that, I mean, do you agree you've got to come at it from that constantly testing, constantly trying?
I think so, yeah.
Perspective?
I'm a big fan of failing rapidly.
Yep.
I think you know, being afraid to try new things is, maybe afraid's too strong a word. Being hesitant to try new things is something that business, you often see in business, that people are hesitant or scared to make change because they're scared of failure. There's nothing wrong with failure. As long as you fail fast and you learn lessons from that, I think that's a really, really positive way forward. How do you apply that to apps? Well, a lot of them are free. Download them, try them. If you don't find them useful after a day or two, delete them.
Yeah, I've had this conversation a number of times. Like, I went through the era of needing to invest, you know, $10, $20, $30,000, whatever it is, on a server just to be able to test certain stuff, and you don't even know what's going to work.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're in an era where we're so blessed. We all own the hardware. We all got phones. We all have a computer or access to it if we're business owners, generally speaking. So it's just doing the work. It's just a time thing now, isn't it? All those barriers for entry in terms of cost are coming down. So I think maybe naturally there's going to be a lot more players come into that, I suppose, technology space. But as you said, the skill will be sifting through and find something that actually works for you, your clients, and I suppose the culture of your business.
And I think a big part of it, you know, peer-to-peer networks are really important. You know, asking mates, asking people who run similar businesses, or in fact different businesses to what you run, what works for them is a really good way to move forward if you're unsure. Recommendations from people that you trust are always going to carry more weight than, you know, whether it's got 3 stars or 3.5 stars on Google or the App Store. So I'd encourage people, you know, try. I know it's not easy. When you've been working all day and you come home and, you know, you have dinner, you put the kids to bed, you work on the accounts, you think about generating leads for your next job, and you get to bed at midnight and then you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I certainly don't underestimate the challenge, and it's easy to say try to make time to do this, but if you can't, then you know, talk to your peers, find out what works for them, talk to the experts. You don't have to invest a lot of money in any of this, or in most cases you don't have to invest anything except your time. See what works and learn quickly from that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that don't underestimate that asking other people too, because it's incredible what some people will be willing to share if you make the time to ask, really.
People are incredibly generous. That's the one thing I found across this industry is that people are incredibly generous in sharing their knowledge and sharing it selflessly. You know, and what I mean by that is not just sharing what worked for them, but sharing what didn't work for them, sharing their failures and what they learnt from that to help you not make the same mistakes. It's characteristic, I think, across our industry that people are very generous in that regard.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If someone's listening to this and considering joining the Master Plumbers, I'll throw it open to give yourself a good plug, because that's what part of this is about. What can they expect as a member?
As a member, you can expect that we will offer you a range of products, services and advice that are relevant to the work that you do.
Okay.
One of the things we're trying to do is to make sure we understand what it is that's important to members, what members need, what members want, and make sure that we have tailored our offering suitably towards that. I think Master Plumbers is there to improve the plumbing industry. That's one of the key objectives that we've always had over our 125-year plus history, and it's something that remains critical to what we're doing. You'll also see a stronger focus on membership and making sure that we're delivering what it is that you need as a member.
And what's the most popular aspect in the membership? Is there something that absolutely everybody loves?
Oh, look, I think everybody loves getting value, and whether that value is through fuel discounts or vehicle discounts, whether the value is access to the quite extensive training services that we provide, or whether it's participating in these sorts of forums such as this morning's breakfast or our regional forums, sharing knowledge, understanding that what we're all trying to do is improve the industry that we work in. Value comes in many, many different forms, and I guess our goal is to make sure that we deliver what's relevant to our members.
And you put a lot of time and effort. You run a training centre?
We do. We run an RTO and a group training scheme, so we offer a Certificate 2, an apprenticeship at Cert 3, and we offer quite an extensive range of Cert 4 as well.
Okay, so again, educating the industry.
Yes, well, look, training and education is absolutely key to the future. The industry's changing, technology's changing, and really every plumber needs to move with the times, to understand that what you might have done back in the day when you were doing training is very different to what's happening now, and the one constant is change, isn't it? So
absolutely,
it's going to apply, and making sure that you're up to date with the latest technologies and regulation and the like to run your business is critically important, and we're a big part of that.
It's a big challenge. I want to change tracks a little bit. You mentioned education. Tournament of the Minds.
Yes.
You're a judge, is that right?
I am. I started off judging. My wife Leonie's been a judge for a number of years, and
oh wow, okay.
It's a fascinating program. It's primary schools and secondary schools who participate as teams in a set challenge which they can plan for and deliver in a presentation form, and also what's known as a spontaneous challenge, where they walk into a room as a team. They have no idea what they're going to be asked to do, but then they have a short period of time to collaborate and think about that, and then bang, present it to a panel.
What's the sample of a problem? Because I remember that I actually, if I remember correctly, I think I actually tried out. I didn't make it to our Tournament of the Minds team back in primary school, but it's quite practical. Or is it still practical problems? It was back then.
No, it's practical problems. So they range across sort of arts and literature and science, engineering, technology, maths, and the like. There's quite a broad range of subjects covering social sciences and a whole range of different areas. As the saying goes, there's something in it for everybody. But at the core, it's about collaboration and teamwork. It's about being able to think on your feet, to work together as a team, to communicate effectively, and to understand when it's time to be a leader and when it's time to be a member of the team. And all of these things are just incredibly useful life skills, if nothing else, for these kids to learn.
Yeah, dealing with problems, you're probably going to come across one or two as you move through your life, right?
Absolutely.
Is it still the scenario where they deliver, in some cases, like a box of different parts, and then you need to construct this into to get A, B, or C outcome? Or is that?
Yeah. So some of the examples that have happened in previous years might be that you you have to build let's say a device, a car, that navigates a maze and picks up an object at the end without touching it with your hands. And you have to not just do that, but explain how you've done it, what you've used, what your design philosophy was behind it, and the role that each member of the team plays in doing this. So typically it's not a demonstration so much as a presentation or if you like, a performance by the team in front of the judges, which makes it so entertaining and brings in all of these different skills from design right through to communication and public speaking.
So when you're not judging Tournament of the Minds, when you're not leading the plumbing industry forward, what do you do outside of, to get a bit personal, what do you do outside of work and TOM as it's known?
Well, I've got 3 kids who are all very active, so a big part of that is driving them around to sports and dancing and the like. But in spare time, I love to fish. Love to get out on the bay. Haven't done that for a little bit. The boat's a bit of an ornament at the moment, but trying to find the time to do that sort of thing. I love walking, going on long walks with the dog. I walk every morning early in the morning with the dog, and that's sort of my thinking time for the day. A nice clear head early in the morning. Yep. Bit cold and dark at this time of year, but it's still enjoyable, and even if I've got to drag the dog out of bed sometimes. And reading books. I love reading books and just relaxing in that way.
I was going to ask you about book and documentary recommendations, because I always do that. So are you a fiction, are you a non-fiction reader? Where do you spend your time?
Bit of both. I guess crossover. What I really enjoy reading at the moment is historic fiction. So authors like Con Eagledon, who wrote a wonderful series about the Mongol Empire, about the War of the Roses in England, and about his latest books on Sparta. Really enjoy reading that historic fiction, which is written in a really entertaining way, and follow the sort of the building of empires and the challenges that they face, and getting a really good understanding and appreciation of what's gone before us in that same way.
And do you have a favourite book, or a book that you go back and reread?
I do like Vince Flynn books, which is sort of crime thriller.
I'm right into my crime podcast at the moment. I really like some of the local Australian ones, because I remember driving to work down Brunswick Street when some of the gangland shootings happened. They had to close the street. Like, it's so close, it's so real, you know. And not that I'm obviously an advocate for any of that, but I find it incredibly interesting to go into what happens in the back streets of Melbourne, you know. So.
It can be fascinating, can't it? Because you read about it, and then you walk through there, or you go past it, and you think, oh gee, this has gone before me, and you get that real connection.
Absolutely. I've got to. I want to go to the old Melbourne Jail. Is one of the things on my to-do list, which is one of those things you don't often explore things in your own backyard. You hear about it, and you're like, oh my goodness, why haven't I done that? It's 10 minutes up the road. So
about the only time you do it is when you got visitors from overseas or
showing
interstate,
them around,
and then you show them around. That's right.
Exactly right. So fishing. When are you going to get back out on the bay?
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully September, and chase a few snapper.
You're a snapper fisherman? I spent a lot of time growing up with my dad in fishing clubs and the like, chasing snapper in the bay, and didn't mind the freshwater and trout and that sort of thing as well. So, and now my son, not to get too far off topic here, but is really starting to take to fishing as well. So it's a good bonding exercise.
Oh, it is, and a good way of relaxing.
Now, do you have any quotes, Peter, or business philosophies that you either like or attempt to live by?
I think the one that probably resonates with me is one by Abraham Lincoln. Best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think
very true.
The reason it resonates is because it whether it's discussing careers with people, whether it's running a business, what we do know is that as things stand today, they'll be very different in 10 years' time, and you can either sit back and let things happen around you, or you can be part of the change yourself. We've seen lots of industries that have been disrupted by technology.
Absolutely.
Taxi industry is probably a good example of that. Well, if there's going to be disruption, you're better off being the disruptor than trying to respond to it. So that's why I like that quote so much.
Yeah. Well, as we alluded to a little bit this morning in our discussions, that some of these changes are now happening so quickly that there's no way you're going to be on the front foot if you want to be part of that future, as you said. So just I'm going to finish with this, Peter. I'm going to let you get back to your day, because I know in a new CEO role there's often a lot to do.
Plenty of challenges.
A question I ask everybody: if you could have one law changed or implemented, what would it be?
I think the strange thing that I find coming into this industry is that products that are available for sale that aren't necessarily certified. So one thing that I've come to understand is that particularly for fixtures that we use for drinking water that have to be certified under the watermark scheme, there's nothing to actually stop people selling fixtures that are potentially unsafe, that aren't compliant. And I guess the concept of point of sale legislation to ban the sale of non-compliant plumbing products is something that I think makes a lot of sense.
That's always been interesting to me, because it seems maybe it's not an easy thing to implement, but it seems like a very easy solution, right? I mean, why can you go to Bunnings and buy a gas hot water service? That doesn't, in a lot of ways, make sense. If you need a licensed person to install them, surely it should be a licensed person who has to buy them. So I'm not sure they're just not there yet, or why that hasn't been done.
Yeah, but even more so, I think we hear stories regularly of people who buy taps and drinking fixtures online because they're cheap.
Yes.
Well, the reason
I dealt with one just 3 days ago. Yeah.
The reason they're cheap is probably because they don't meet Australian standards and they've been imported and sold online, because no respected retailer would probably stock them. And as we've said to consumers on many occasions, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
Get your stuff through a licensed plumber and make sure a licensed plumber installs it if you want to be safe from things like from lead poisoning, for instance, or Legionella or carbon monoxide.
And as licensed plumbers, it's on us, right?
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add, Peter, and then we'll wrap it?
No, all good. I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat.
No problems. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing how the organisation continues to develop, add value to its members, and I think there's some really significant and key areas that I know that you're going to touch going forward, and keen to see how it plays out. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.